Hello everyone, welcome back to our React tutorial series. Today we are focusing on rendering lists in React. Remember in our last class we talked about conditional rendering and how to do that. Today we're going to render lists, and of course we're going to see how to use condition to render lists in our React application. So why is list important in our application, right? In most applications we work with lists, whether it is a list of products, list of users, list of messages, or even list of notifications. React provides different ways to do this, and for this video we're going to focus on the map method to render our list. So now let's go back to see what we mean by list and how to render them in React. So here is our application, our app.js. We're going to create a list of food. So when I say list, I mean array. Here I'm going to create an array of food. I'm going to say const I'm going to say food array is equal to array of food, right? Food array should be equal to array of food. So I'm just going to have rice, beans, plantain, yam, and curry. So now we have array of foods. How do we render this array in our component? So we're going to create food array. We're going to use the map method to say food array.map, and we are mapping through food. So if we are mapping for every iteration, we are returning the element of the array, and we are returning the index of the element of the array, which means the position of the element in the array. And for every loop, we are rendering a UL component. We're rendering a list component, right? So if we save this and go back to our application, we're going to have the list of food in our browser, right? We're going to have the list of food in our browser. So let's see how to do this more efficiently and more cleaner. We're going to see different ways of doing this even more professionally. First, we're going to see how to extract list items into a separate component. So we're going to create a component, extract the list item, and render the component in our JSS. Let's do that by creating a component first. So I'm going to create a component called food items. And in the food items, I'm going to say food item is equal to this, and here I'm going to return only the li component, which of course is going to hold our food. That means our food item is going to accept a property called food, right? A property called food, and I'm going to close this here. So this is what I have. I've created a component called food item. This component is accepting a property called food, and it's going to return the JSX here food. So what I'm going to do is to render this component when I map through this food array. And how do I do that? I'm going to say food array dot map. So whenever I map through the food array, I'm going to return the items, of course, and I'm going to return the index, and I'm going to return a JSX, which is going to be a component, and this is the component we're going to return, right? And we're going to have it as a component. So this is what we're saying. But of course, we said our component is expecting a property called food, and we're going to pass that prop here called food, which is going to be our items, right? And we're going to pass in the key, of course. So what this is doing is each time, let's change this, right? Let's change this. Each time we loop through this array, we are calling this component, and this component is accepting the item, the food property, and the key prop. So we're also going to have here, let's add the key prop here to be a key, So that means we're also accepting key prop here. So if we save this and go back to our browser, we're still going to see the same thing, but of course it is now cleaner and easy to maintain. If you want to maintain your component separately, you just have to update your component And if you want to maintain your mapping, you can just come here to maintain it. So from what we did here, you can see that the food item component is now reusable. We can reuse this food item component anywhere in our application, which of course keeps our application clean and focused on rendering just the food items. We're not bothered about performing the components here. We're just calling the components, and the components can be reusable. If we do export this, it means we can reuse this, but since you can't do that here because we have this exported as default. So the next scenario is, what if we have an array of objects? In this case, I have students, right? Students that have properties like name, age, and gender. So I'm going to create an array of students. I'm going to say const students array equal to this, right? And I'm going to have more students, the Jane and John. So I have this. How do I render items? Like, how do I render array of objects? So from what I have here, I'm going to create a new component, just like we created a component for food items. I'm going to create a component called const user card equal to this and this. So I'm having a property called the user, the name, the age, and the email, and I'm just rendering a single parent component holding h1, h2, and h3. So I'm going to change all of this to h3 so it becomes beautiful. So having created this, the next step is to call the user card in our JSX. So I'm going to comment out what we already have here, and I'm going to have something else, and I'm going to say user array, and I'm going to say user, not user array, and I'm going to say student dot map student and index, right? So this is going to return this. So I'm only going to return the user card, which of course we created here, and I'm going to pass in the user property, the user age, and the user email, and of course the user key. That means we'll come back here to accept the key and pass in the key as an attribute to the single parent element. So if we save this to make sure we're on the safe side, we have the students.map returning the student object and returning the index, and we're passing in the card. So if we save this and go back, we have John is 20 years and John at gmail.com, Jane is 19 years and Jane at gmail.com. So if we apply styling to this, we're going to have a beautiful user card. So guys, this is how to render an array of objects in our React application. Next, we're going to see how to render our list conditionally. So now we have students that has their age. I'm going to add another user, and I'm going to have another student that I'm going to call Jill, right? So I have 20 years, 19 years, 11 years, and 12 years. So I'm going to render only students that are above 18 years, right? So how do we do that conditionally? First of all, our component is still our component. We are reusing it because you're passing a property. The only thing that is going to change is going to be our map method. Now we're going to filter only users that are above 18 years, and those are the users we're going to list. So we're going to use a method called filter, a JavaScript method called filter to do that. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, filter the students. So I'm just going to comment this out. Let's write it from scratch. I'm going to say student dot filter. So I'm filtering the students, right? I'm saying where the age is greater than 18. This is going to return an array. This is going to return an array of students that their age is greater than 18. So when you return this array, I want you to map through this array that you've returned. And you're going to have what you have before. So have the item which is here. We're going to change this. Okay, this item will have the index, and this is what we have. We're saying filter all the students that are above 18 years. When you get the array of the students, map through them and call the user card. If you save this, you're going to have only John, who is 20 years, and Jane, who is 18 years. So now let's see how to do this cleaner. First of all, we're going to create a variable called filtered students. Filtered students is going to be a function that is going to return all the filtered students. So I'm saying students.filter that are greater than 18 years. So this function is going to return all the students that are 18 years. So from here, I can just pick up this function, and instead of doing my filtering here, I can just say filtered students.map, because the filtered student returns an array. Filtered students returns an array, and we're mapping through that array. If we go back, there's an error, say uncaught error, filtered students.map is not. So we made some modification here. So instead of having it as a function, we just created a variable which is saying filtered student equal to student.filter is just returning a variable, right? So that is the modification. And when we do that, we came back here to map through the filtered students, and voila, we still have Jane and John. So you can also change this condition from here to say age is less than 19. So we're getting students that age less than 19. If we do this, we have Jim, who is 11, and we have Jill, who is 12 years old. So guys, that is how to render your list conditionally in React. So next, we're going to see how to save this list in a state. So instead of having it as just variable, we can save it in a state. It's not something difficult. We can just do that by easily creating a state called students. So I can create a state called students. And I'll create a setter for it, set student, which is going to be equal to use state, and the initial value is going to be this array. So I can just cut off this array and use it as the initial value of this. So if I save this, the same thing, nothing changed. So what I did was to convert this from just ordinary variable to a state, which means we can update this list. We can create new user using set state, set student. We can delete this user and do anything, because it is now in a state. It is now persistent throughout this page. And that is how you rendered lists conditionally, saved list in a state, and did every other optimization to effectively render your list in your application. If you found this video interesting, please don't forget to give us thumbs up, subscribe, share, recommend for your friends, while I see you in the next video.